Hello and welcome to Thought Provoking Tech. I'm Zach, and this is Thought Provoking Tech Weekly. This is the very first episode of Thought Provoking Tech Weekly in the new virtual studio. So I'm pretty excited about this. I'm hoping that it turns out pretty cool. That it's exciting. I'm very excited about this project. It's in the very early stages. This is an alpha show, and if you're listening in the recorded podcast later on, I do recommend going over to YouTube and checking this first episode out and let me know what you think. So with the first virtual studio, I have a lot of work I'll be doing. I want to do digital avatars controlled through VR motion capture, possibly through the Vive or the Oculus Rift. I haven't decided. Hopefully making it universal. I want to make it so that people can join me, have guests, as well as have like a live people actually in the studio. Probably have some form of barrier that they can't cross. Maybe something just invisible or something. But I have a lot of ideas that I want to implement with this. So I'm excited about it. So I figured I'd go ahead and start with the very early stages of this project. So let's go ahead and get started with the very first topic. All right, so as you can see, I have to go to first person mode to control and get the options. I'm definitely going to say something that's like one of the first things I work on is just kind of streamlining the actual process of pulling up articles on the big screen TV in the virtual environment. But that is something that's going to be in the works still. But the very first topic is on Elon Musk, and
Inspired by getting your
TPT,
startup started,
has
build
this
a
article,
portfolio to help
and
lift
has
your
the news
ideas
about,
off the ground.
Elon Musk
iShares Core.
talk. It looks like they're going to try to play a stupid autoplay video, which is the most annoying thing ever. But the main thing I want to bring up is that they are going to do it, aren't they? Okay, let me go pause this real quick. Darn autoplay videos. The worst things ever. All right, so let's go and be back to the actual conversation now that we've been so rudely interrupted by autoplay videos. So Elon Musk said that over time, I think we'll probably see a closer merger of biological intelligence and digital intelligence. I definitely agree with you there. It'll be interesting to kind of see what kind of talks that we have. But he continues on by saying it's mostly about the bandwidth, the speed of the connection between your brain and the digital version of yourself, particularly output. Input we have pretty down. We have audio and video streaming on our video on multiple monitors usually, having tons of data coming in. Our brain can process that pretty quickly. It's the output, our communication between us and the digital devices. We have keyboards, mice, joysticks, tons of different input devices, even voice control, but none of those are fast. Our brains can think so much quicker. For example, just from a personal example of mine, is having doing a CAD program. You can kind of visualize the object in 3D, especially if you've done 3D quite a bit. You know what you want, but getting that, you want a square that's 5x4. It takes a little bit of time. If you could just say that I want a square 5x4, your mind digitally outputs that. It'll be instantly there as quick as your mind can think it. And that'll be something that's kind of a more complex example. But there's so many things like just text output. If we could just type as fast as we could think, our output to the computers would be so much faster. Our proficiency would be so much better, and we'd be able to interact on a level that is kind of good, that we could actually compete with automation in the future, where it'll be able to, just like, for example, AI that'll be able to write code in the not too distant future. If we could think as fast as, and we could type that code that we think as fast as we could think and run through different iterations of programming, we'd be able to program so much faster that we'd be able to actually compete with the AI in the future. So I found that to be just a very interesting article, and interesting to see that Elon Musk is thinking about it. He thinks about a ton of things, though, from self-driving cars to space exploration to AI to us just being in a virtual simulation, and our competition with AI is going to be irrelevant anyways if we're just in a simulation anyways. Now on to the next topic, liquid batteries. So this is pretty cool article too. With liquid batteries, the trick was to modify the molecules of the electrolytes, ferrocene and viogen, so that they're stable, water soluble, and resistant to degradation. So when they're dissolved in neutral water, the resulting solution only loses 1% of its capacity every 1,000 cycles. It could be several years before you even notice a slight drop off in performance. So that's pretty interesting. If we have something that lasts that long, it's probably not going to be something that's going to be in our phones or our laptops and mobile devices right off the bat. But for example, infrastructure that's meant to be around for years and years. For example, as the picture is showing, solar capabilities. So the Tesla Powerwall that's going to be in your house, if that had the capabilities of being in a environment that was or had a battery connected to it that could last 10 years, 15 years, for example, that would make it just so much more future proof with how the setup could go, so you don't have to replace batteries every so many years as the cycle and the capacity of those batteries starts to degrade. If you could have a daily charge cycle and it only loses 1% over 1,000 charges, that's theoretically 1,000 days, which is going to be charging more charge cycles probably than that in a day. But just theoretically, if you could last 1,000 days and only lose 1%, that's massive, especially for having massive battery backups, which will be acquired as people move to solar electricity, especially people that aren't connected to the grid all the time. So just interesting to see where the future of battery technology might lie. Battery technology is something that's, I think, is really holding us back for the most part. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in battery tech. So it'll be interesting to see where we go from here, where our battery tech brings us. We really need lighter batteries. I don't know if this really increased the other than having longer life of our batteries, if we could increase the storage capabilities for the size and the weight that they already have, that'd be something that's very good for our mobile devices, which are going to become more and more powerful, especially devices that are going to be rendering AR and VR all the time in a mobile setup. Having those where they could last 4 or 5 hours VR, especially if you're in an office setting and using AR to design stuff and constantly having it connected to your face, but you don't want to be tethered to a computer. You want to have that completely wireless. Having that work for 4 hours or 5 hours without having to be charged, and during lunchtime you can connect it onto its dock and then come back and finish the rest of your day because it's charged over your lunch break. So it'll be interesting to see where battery technology goes. There's a lot of advancements needed, but this will definitely be something great for the solar and wind industry, for people that are definitely implementing that locally in their own houses. On to the very next topic. So the very next topic is on VR. Gabe Newell from Valve, if you don't know where he's from, he says that wireless VR is essentially a solved problem. So to directly quote him, he says, "Wireless is a solved problem at this point." And he said that at a roundtable of developers at the company's headquarters in Washington. So, and back to expanded quote from it is, "So my expectation is that it will be an add-on in 2017, and it will be an integrated feature in 2018. So he's saying that he's expecting that HEC, probably Oculus too, but since Valve and HEC are working so closely together, will have the wireless VR as an add-on, and third-party companies, of course. We already have the TP Cast that's already out there in the world, but beyond that, it'll be interesting to see where everything goes from there. But he is expecting that in 2018 it'll be automatically integrated. I'm seeing a lot of rumors that we probably won't see a new version of the headsets this year. If we do, it'll be at the very end of this year. So maybe that's be something that version 2 of these, generation 2 of these devices, will include wireless VR built straight in. So that'll be very interesting to see if that's the case. And that's pretty much it for that article. Let's go ahead and go back. And another cool article is Chrome now supports VR in their non-developer editions of the of Chrome. So in the past they had it in the development editions, but now you can actually utilize the web VR straight up in Chrome. There's an example that you can kind of see on screen uh, in this GIF that shows a demonstration that someone did on a documentary called Bear 71. It's pretty cool. There is this bit where there's just like a flat virtual screen on your actual screen, but there's another bit where it's showing an actual map you can move around with just by clicking. I don't have a VR headset right now, and my phone isn't compatible with the Google Cardboard for some reason. The Droid Max they didn't include all the sensors that you needed. I don't know why, but they didn't. So I couldn't really test it out with like a VR headset on. But I did test around with it on my desktop. It worked great. It was nice and fluid. You can move around and you can click on the different tags. Like you just saw the one called Bear 71. You could click on that tag and it had a little bit of information about that creature. There was different coyotes and moose and stuff that had that tag. It was just a cool interactive example. It's something that's we're in the very early stages of right now. It's going to be interesting to see where it comes from here. But it's awesome to see that Google has now released that out in the wild now, so that developers can start testing it and start rolling it out for consumers to start utilizing. And that's going to be the biggest thing right there, is getting this into the hands of consumers and not really dedicated, not really requiring to have a VR headset, but just be able to interact with these 3D environments even in the 2D browser is going to be a big jump forward. I know like Unity 3D, just simply because I have some experience with Unity, did have like a plugin for the web, but the way that web VR is going to work, it's just completely seamless with HTML5 and WebGL and WebVR. So it's just going to be you go to the website and now it's an immersive 3D environment as opposed to just being a completely 2D screen that has 2D videos, 2D pictures, and it's all laid out in 2D. So it's going to be interesting to see where our web interfaces come from here. I expect to see some pretty cool innovations from companies, and now that this is out in consumers' hands, it'll be a while before a lot of websites actually have dedicated sites for this, other than kind of some fringe sites like this. But for your standard sites having a VR portal, will probably be the first thing we see. We probably won't see their homepage becoming the VR page for quite some time as this starts rolling out and people start having devices that are capable of rendering it, because it will require a certain amount of graphical capabilities and CPU capabilities, even more simple designs like they're showing off right now. So on to the very next topic. The next topic is just on Mark Zuckerberg's tour of the Oculus research lab. I just thought this was pretty cool. The coolest thing that I saw personally was, let's go ahead and jump straight to that picture. I don't want to log in for Facebook. No, thank you. Sorry, Facebook. Was this picture right here of Mark Zuckerberg playing Spider-Man. So in his caption of this you can see that it says, "We're working on new ways to bring your hands in virtual reality and augmented reality. Wearing these gloves, you can draw, type on a virtual keyboard, and even shoot webs like Spider-Man. That's what I'm doing here." So it's a image of Mark in a setup that they have that has cameras all around him. I mean, there's probably 20 cameras pointing at him, probably for the detection of all the points on the glove. I'm assuming it doesn't look like they're actually wired in or communicating, so it's probably just based on the camera's sight of the glove. So it's just pretty interesting to see that at least Oculus is doing work in here. I don't expect people to sit there and wear gloves all the time when they're interacting with VR, but it'll be interesting to see if some games take and some experiences take extra advantage. I want to bring your experience to the next level, having your complete control of your fingers and your hands. And we're starting to see better control, like the Oculus Touch. Some examples and demos I've seen of that are pretty awesome with how you can interact with the world. but having even the higher level of your hands being literally in the game world, where if you could type on a virtual keyboard, that is going to be pretty awesome. And you could do so much with that by having your full hand and having all your fingers and all your articulation into the virtual worlds. It's going to be a game changer, really. But there is the other thing of people aren't going to want to wear gloves all the time. So it's going to be where we can see the technology going. Maybe in the distant future, it could just detect our hands perfectly without any type of markers on them. But it is cool to see some of the work that Oculus is doing. Just another picture I just wanted to show off real quick. And sorry for audio listeners, you can't really see this, but they are working on a big audio room where you have no audio, and you can see a guy here working on a CNC that they have for making custom lenses. So just pretty cool to see kind of a behind the scenes look into what Oculus is doing in the world of VR and the development that they're putting into their software and their hardware and what we might see in the next generation. So the very next topic is again another VR topic, and this is on HTC working on a mobile VR solution. So they already have a dedicated VR setup with the HTC Vive. And as they say, Vive is very top end. And in the coming months, you'll see our plans in terms of mobility and VR. And it's not a phone slapped onto a headset, he said. It's a different thing. So that was, who said that? Should have wrote that down in my notes. Chia Lin Chang? I probably pronounced that wrong. But he's the president of Global Sales. That's what he said in an interview regarding the HTC U series launch event. So it'll be interesting to see what they roll out. I'm expecting there might be something kind of like the Windows Developer conference that they had, I think at the beginning of this year, or was at the end of last year, where they showed their kind of integrations that they're going to be working on in the near future with, and another dang autoplay ad. Thank you, CNET this time. What is it with C companies? CNBC, CNET, both of them, I think autoplay video is the best thing ever, apparently. Okay, so back onto the news. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what they do. Getting back on track what I was saying, I'm wondering if it's going to be something like the mid-range VR headsets that Windows is partnering with some of their partners, of course, and hoping to roll out things that might have wireless integration, might be able to detect your hands, and have that coming from your headset itself, and have the tracking being done from your headset, and possibly using the phone for your head control, but having a camera on your headset, like we've seen with some of the mid-range solutions, so you can still have some type of hand tracking, but it won't have to be tethered to a solution. I really think kind of a perfect mix between the capabilities of your dedicated desktop VR with a mobile solution where you're not tethered to anything. The tracking units are done from your head. You still have full hand control. That'll be a kind of perfect solution for probably generation 2, where you're not tethered to anything. You can literally move it around as much as you want, but still having the capabilities of the higher end VR, where you have great hand tracking and higher capabilities of rendering. I don't know what they'll do here, but maybe they'll have some type of dock that goes into that kind of offset your rendering capabilities. Kind of like how they have the GPU docks now that can communicate over Thunderbolt Port 3. Maybe the new phone that they'll be launching will have Thunderbolt 3. It might have something similar to that. That'd be pretty awesome if they could offload some of the graphical capabilities, because that's where phones are still pretty much lacking a lot. CPU's doing pretty good, but if they could offload some of that processing onto a dedicated chip in the headset, that'd be pretty interesting. But we have no idea of what they're actually doing right now. But it is interesting to see that they are working on something, and they're not just going to try to make a Gear VR or a Google Daydream clone. They're going to do something that's maybe a little more advanced, and it'll be interesting to see what they actually come up with. So now on to AR. quite a few VR topics. There's actually a lot of news for VR this week. It's pretty interesting if you're interested in the VR, all the news that came out. But now let's change gears a little bit and go to AR. AR is something I really think is going to be what really gets a lot of people into our virtual worlds. With AR, you're not just restricted to a completely virtual world. You can bring the virtual world to your real life world. So this would be great for more than just like gaming and entertainment purposes. And VR has reaches outside of gaming and entertainment, but it seems like that's where the focus is right now. With AR, you'll be able to go up another level. You'll be able to bring your virtual world, like I said, into your real world. So if you're like a designer, you could design something and see that in your real world to see kind of how it scales up with real world products that already exist. You can match it up to a certain degree. You are not going to get 100%, efficiency and have stuff line up perfectly because the scaling stuff will be off a little bit, but you can have a rough idea. You can be able to compare your new design to the previous generation and see kind of how it specs up and how it looks to what is already out on the market. If you're designing a home, for example, if you're a architect, you could, instead of having to construct those 3D models that they construct by hand that look awesome and stuff, but you'll be able to do that fully in 3D and render that on a table. You can show your clients, and they could be from 1,000 miles away and render that same example on their table and see what it is. They could walk around it, get good looks at it. They could jump inside of it and project a single room around them and look. It'd be like they're in that room. So AR is going to be pretty awesome, and being able to have that mixed reality where you have both the best of both worlds, where you could bring the virtual world into your real world, but you could have the escapism of VR, where you could jump into a fully virtual world and you don't see the real world at all. Having both of those capabilities in a single headset is really where I think these technologies are really going to shine. We're not super far from that. I've seen some pretty cool examples of mixed reality on the web, and it'll be interesting to see when a headset launches that can do great, both of those great. HoloLens right now is crazy expensive, $3,000 for the developer edition and $5,000 if you're actually wanting to get the commercial version. So if you're like an end user, that's pretty much the package you'll be picking up. So it's not something that a lot of companies are going to be able to invest in, simply because it's such a massive investment and it's such an early technology that a lot of people aren't able to fully take advantage of it yet, and it's still in the very early stages of developing. So it's not really worth it for a lot of companies, especially companies that don't have huge budgets, and something more for them to start testing and trying to determine how they want to integrate it into the workflows rather than actually already integrating it into the workflows. There are companies that are integrating it, but for the most part, it'll be something that hopefully in the next year or two, we really see the technology start to mature and become more viable in the market as a whole, so that people can start getting their hands on this and start integrating this awesome technology into their daily lives. Because I definitely think it's going to be a massive revolution in how we integrate computing into our daily lives. Between AR and VR combining into mixed reality and cloud computing joining forces together, and be able to offset some of that computing into a remote server, which VR, we're still a little ways from that, simply because the latency, you need to have very fast FPS so that you don't get sick from VR. But we're getting there. One thing that I'm very passionate about is Liquid Sky, because I feel that they are working on something that will help push cloud computing into the real world. They're working very hard on getting latency, sub 30 millisecond latency from a cloud computer that's hundreds of kilometers away from you or hundreds of miles away from you, and be able to have that latency that's very, very low. Our internet infrastructure itself, as that advances, as fiber rolls out more into more and more places, as our back end gets better and stronger, we'll see that latency decrease too, so that the total latency between Liquid Sky itself and then your network latency, if they could get that on the, like a 25-second total latency from the render time to the time you're seeing it. We'll see that VR and stuff might be able to be offloaded into VR, and then we can have very low powered, well, more low powered headsets that aren't as bulky, don't require as much battery power to sit there and do all the computation. They're just literally just rendering the stuff onto the screen, which will still be somewhat computational heavy because they're going to be 4K screens more than likely to get completely get rid of the screen door effect and everything along those lines. So it'll be interesting to see where we go to from there. But definitely see those two technologies being two major players in the next, I hope, 1 to 2 years. But we'll have to see where when that actually starts rolling out. So on to the next article. PAL V begins pre-sales of their flying car, starting at $400,000. So go ahead and pull out your checkbooks, folks, and go ahead and start investing. The PAL V has a 100 mile per hour top speed on the ground, with a 0 to second mile per hour time of 9 seconds. On the ground, you can drive for a pretty impressive 817 miles, driving on a full tank of gas with a fuel efficiency of 31 miles per gallon. So you can definitely see it has a pretty beefy tank of gas, because 31 miles per gallon isn't quite impressive on its own, but it can go through 817 miles. While airborne, it can go 112 miles per hour, but the mileage drops considerably down to about 310 miles on average. So this isn't what I would really call a self-driving or a flying car. It's kind of getting there, but doesn't look too practical. I really think that having something more along the lines of E-Hang's quadcopter, or the evolution of that, will be what really makes a self-driving car really possible, simply because of the backup of having like 8 rotors, by having, you know, 2 sets of or pairs in each quadrant of the flying drone, or whatever you want to call it. Having that backup in case one motor fails. Quads can actually fly with 3 motors, so it won't be a perfectly smooth experience, but it does have that backup of not having to just relying on a single rotor. That's the one that's going to be flying you around. In addition, they're more stable, simply because you have more rotors that are doing the lifting, and it's not as complex to learn how to fly on top of that. So it's not probably the best option, but it is interesting to see that people are doing work into this and seeing where the future will lie. If you look back into the old time books of old, they expected us to have self-driving or flying cars. Flying cars, you know, long time ago. So we're still not even close to that. But it'll be interesting to see what actually comes from this, and if this actually becomes a viable product that people actually can buy, and on top of that is something that is legal to fly. That'll be a big thing on top of that. So now on to some drone news. The Drone Racing League gets a major sponsor. So apparently the big sponsor is a insurance company. I've never heard of them. Maybe you have. It's Alliance. That's kind of like Alliance, but with a Z instead of a CE, for those that are listening. And as you can see, looks like they have a pretty impressive setup now. You can see that drone racing is becoming more and more mainstream, I guess, because it's starting to become more like your traditional racing, where you have these race events that are actually named after the your partner. So today, which this article is several days old by now, but the Drone Racing League announced a multi-year global partnership with the world's top insurance brand, Alliance. As the title sponsor of Drone Racing League's elite race circuit, Alliance will leverage its motor racing heritage to bring the sport of the future to the rapidly growing worldwide audience. In 2017, the Alliance World Championship Series will include 6 races to test piloting skills and the limits of FPV, which is first-person view flight. The races will begin airing on premier broadcast channels in more than 75 countries in June of this year. Each DRL race, which is Drone Racing League, features 16 of the world's greatest drone pilots flying their custom designed racing drone at speeds above 90 miles per hour through one of a kind three dimensional race courses in iconic venues around the world. The Alliance World Championship races are on an elimination style competition that culminates in a worldwide championship and the crowning of the world's greatest drone pilot. So, just a cool article. As we see new sports start to evolve from technology, I definitely see this is going to be a trend. Esports is definitely gaining a lot of ground. It's becoming bigger and bigger. Esports and drone racing and all these technology centered events are becoming more and more widespread as we see that our interest and the interest of the population as a whole becomes more and more focused on technology as people become more and more obsessed with technology because our interests are changing. NFL ratings have kind of dropped a decent amount, but that's because people's kind of interests are evolving. Our generations are starting to grow older. The generations that grew up with technology in our daily lives are starting to become adults and hopefully becoming working citizens in the world. And our interest in what is going to be featured to us on TV and on streaming services primarily, because that seems like what the younger generation, myself included, really focuses on: Netflix, YouTube, Twitch. We're more into that than standard cable TV. So we're really going to see that, Twitch, just mentioning Twitch and YouTube gaming are huge. People make tons of money doing that, and it's essentially a sport now. Not really a sport in the example of NFL is a sport, but it's something that people spectate. People get thousands of viewers watching them simply play a game. So it is kind of the big spectator event now, along with drone racing and esports, which is kind of the more competitive version of just kind of streaming from your house and just your general gameplay. So it's interesting to see that as our interests evolve, kind of the new sports that are coming, or the spectator events, more so than just sports, are becoming more and more focused in the world. And the final article for today, in the same vein of drones, is Dubai is launching a self-driving taxi. So Dubai has tested a Chinese prototype of a self-driving hover taxi, its transport authority said on Monday, with the aim of introducing the aerial vehicle in the Emirate by July. The test of the one-man electric vehicle comes as the city-state in the United Arab Emirates seeks to ensure a quarter of its mean of transportation are self-driving by 2030. The EHang 184, which I actually mentioned earlier in the PAL V news article, can travel on a programmed course at 100 kilometers an hour, which is roughly equivalent to 60 miles per hour, at an altitude of 300 meters, which is roughly equivalent to 1,000 feet, the authority said in a statement. So it's pretty interesting to see that the EHang's quadcopter setup, which actually isn't a quadcopter because it's technically a octocopter because it has 4 pairs of blades, which does get that redundancy, that backup in case one does fail. It does have numerous rotors, so if one fails, then it can still fly, and you're not going to fall to your death and possibly kill people that are underneath of you. It'll be interesting to see if this starts throughout in the world as a whole, and how EHang does. The EHang actually, as far as I know, announced their drone or their quadcopter or their well, I'm just going to say drone because it's an octocopter, but drone is more vague. They announced it in CES last year, so it's been about 15 months or so. No, less than that, about 13 months, I think, since it was announced. I believe it was last year. So it's interesting to see that it's actually getting, hopefully, to the stage of being, what I was thinking is 18 months, roughly is when it'll be start to be tested and deployed. It'll be about 18 months from its announcement date. So it'll be interesting to see how they fare in that. There's a lot of legislation that needs to be done, especially in the U.S., to really have access to this and have this rolled out where we are. But if they have successful tests in the UAE, then maybe that'll be something that gives them some footing, and you can start to roll out this and start doing testing in the U.S. And it'll be interesting to see where we go from this. It'll be interesting to see if I think it's going to have to be something that's almost completely autonomous, because if you just have people just flying all over the air, you're going to have issues with commercial aircraft, that are all on flight pass. You're going to have issues with all kinds of things if people are just flying wherever they want. Maybe you're restricted to essentially flying over highways, but then you kind of lose out on the benefit of flying, where you could fly as the crow flies, but at the same time you don't want people flying over your house. So it's gonna be interesting to see what kind of comes up legal wise in allowing these equipment into the world as a whole, and how that competes with self-driving cars on the ground. And maybe we'll have some type of combination of both of them working together to free up our roadways, have more efficient travel, and get us into the future of transportation where you maybe not be something that you own, and it'll be something more like they are deploying in the UAE, where it's actually a self-driving or self-flying taxi, more so than just a car that you own, and you just call it in, it picks you up, and it drops you off, and then it moves on to the very next person. So that's pretty much it for this episode, guys. I appreciate everybody that stuck around for this whole video. If you listened to the whole thing, stuck around through this whole episode. For audio listeners, it was probably a little rough simply because I'm trying to run the virtual studio at the same time. But if you watch this and you find it interesting, let me know what you think. This is definitely something I'm going to be rolling out and working on more in the coming weeks. I hope to kind of advance this into something that's a little more impressive than just a couple of screens into this 3D environment. Let's go ahead and jump back to the first person mode. I do have some getting some scenery going on. I definitely having props and stuff is very bland in here right now. Getting some props going on is definitely going to be a big focus in the near future. Well, not a big focus. It's to be kind of a supplementary focus to just kind of spruce up the environment. There's some major key things that I want to get, such as digital avatars that are controlled through motion capture from VR headsets, and having the ability to just have stuff more streamlined, getting to articles easier, and so much more that I want to get you going on. Hope to hopefully get some guests on this show in the near future, hopefully. So if you're interested in that, hit me up. Definitely interested in getting some people on. I do plan on continuing having the screen, so if someone only doesn't have a VR headset, they can get up on the screen. I also thought about designing a couple of those telepresence robots and letting people move around with those through like a keyboard and mouse or a joystick or a gamepad, Xbox 360 gamepad or something like that, and then having their voice or their video being played on the telepresence robot, so that they do have some way to move around the environment and have some type of ability to kind of have some interaction with the virtual studio, but not just be a image on the wall. So there's a lot of cool things I want to be doing in the near future. So if you like what I did here, let me know. I'm definitely interested for more feedback. If you're interested in collaborating, let me know. And also head over to thoughtprovokingtech.com to check out the forums, or you can go to interstellarinnovation.com. A little more lengthy domain. Actually, they're pretty much close to the same length. But or just check out the links in the description below. You can go straight there to the Thought Provoking Tech weekly blog. Thanks for watching, guys, or listening. And until next time, Zach out.